The world watched in disbelief as the early morning calm of February 24, 2022, was shattered. Russian forces under the direct order of President Vladimir Putin launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. This was not a minor border skirmish or a limited incursion, it was a multi-pronged assault from the north, east, and south. Tanks rolled across the border, missiles struck cities far from the front lines, and paratroopers attempted to seize key airfields near the capital, Kyiv. The stated goals were the demilitarization and denazification of Ukraine, language that, honestly, baffled and horrified most international observers, who saw it as a baseless pretext for a war of aggression aimed at subjugating a sovereign nation and extinguishing its distinct national identity. To understand this moment, one must look back not just years, but decades and even centuries. The roots of the conflict are deeply entangled with Russia's long-held imperial view of Ukraine. For much of its history, Ukraine has been under Russian or Soviet domination, and its language and culture were often suppressed. Since gaining independence in 1991 with the collapse of the Soviet Union, Ukraine has steadily pivoted towards the West, seeking closer ties with the European Union and NATO. This democratic trajectory was seen as a direct threat by the Kremlin, which views a successful, Western-aligned Ukraine on its border as a dangerous precedent that could inspire similar aspirations within Russia itself, challenging Putin's autocratic rule. At the heart of this conflict are two vastly different leaders. On one side is Vladimir Putin, the long-serving president of Russia. A former KGB officer, he has cultivated an image of a strongman determined to restore Russia's perceived greatness and challenge the post-Cold War order. His leadership style is autocratic, characterized by suppression of dissent, media control, and confrontational foreign policy. Putin's decision to invade was deeply personal, reflecting his belief that Ukraine is not a real country and that its destiny is intertwined with Russia's. His actions have made him a pariah in much of the world. His counterpart is Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. A former actor and comedian, he was elected in 2019 on a promise to fight corruption. Few expected him to rise to the occasion of a full-scale invasion. Yet, when offered evacuation by the United States, he famously replied, "I need ammunition, not a ride." His decision to remain in Kyiv, a city under siege, and his nightly video addresses transformed him into a global symbol of defiance and courage. Zelensky has rallied his people and secured unprecedented international support, becoming the face of Ukrainian resistance. The international response has been swift and largely united. The United States, under President Joe Biden, has led a broad coalition providing massive military, financial, and humanitarian aid to Ukraine. This support has been crucial, supplying Ukrainian forces with Javelin missiles, HIMARS systems, and advanced air defense batteries. The United Kingdom and European Union have been pivotal partners. The EU has imposed sweeping sanctions on Russia and granted Ukraine candidate status for membership. However, the global response is not monolithic. Countries like China and Iran have provided Russia with economic and military support, including drones used to attack Ukrainian cities. Major nations like India, Brazil, and South Africa have maintained a more neutral stance, avoiding direct condemnation of Russia and calling for negotiated peace. This division highlights the complex geopolitical landscape, where historical allegiances and economic dependencies prevent a completely unified front against the Kremlin. The war has inflicted a staggering and heartbreaking toll on the people of Ukraine. From the first day, civilian areas have been relentlessly targeted. Cities like Mariupol, Bucha, and Bakhmut have become bywords for destruction and atrocity. Russian forces have bombed hospitals, schools, theaters, and residential apartment blocks, causing immense suffering. The United Nations has documented tens of thousands of civilian casualties, though the true number is believed to be significantly higher. Millions have been forced to flee their homes, creating the largest refugee crisis in Europe since the Second World War. These are not just statistics. They are shattered families, lost loved ones, and entire communities erased from the map. Life for those who remain in Ukraine has been fundamentally altered. Constant air raid sirens are a daily reality, forcing people to repeatedly seek shelter in basements or subway stations. Russia's systematic attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure have plunged the country into darkness and cold, especially during the harsh winter months. This strategy is deliberately designed to break the will of the civilian population by making normal life impossible. Access to basic necessities like clean water, heating, and stable electricity has become a daily struggle for millions. Yet amidst the hardship, the resilience of the Ukrainian people has been extraordinary, as they work to repair the damage and support each other. The war's impact is also felt deeply within Russia, though in a very different way. The Kremlin has imposed a near-totalitarian level of control over information, branding the invasion a special military operation, and criminalizing any reporting that contradicts the official narrative. This has created a society shrouded in propaganda and fear. The economic sanctions imposed by the West, while not causing an immediate collapse, have gradually degraded the Russian economy, affecting ordinary citizens through rising prices and a decline in living standards. The most direct impact, however, has been the human cost of mobilization, which has sent hundreds of thousands of Russian men to the front lines, many with little training and poor equipment, resulting in devastating casualties. For civilians on both sides, the psychological trauma is profound and will last for generations. Ukrainian children have grown up knowing nothing but war, their education and sense of security destroyed. Many have witnessed horrors that no one, let alone a child, should ever see. In Russia, families are torn apart by political divisions and the grief of losing sons and fathers in a war whose purpose many privately question but dare not publicly oppose. The conflict has sown seeds of hatred and distrust that will be incredibly difficult to overcome, ensuring that even when the fighting stops, the emotional and psychological scars will remain for a very long time. The military conflict has evolved through several distinct phases. The initial Russian plan for a swift thunder run to capture Kiev and decapitate the government failed spectacularly in the face of determined Ukrainian resistance. Ukrainian forces, using their knowledge of the terrain and Western-supplied anti-tank weapons, inflicted heavy losses on Russian armored columns, forcing a humiliating retreat from the north. The war then shifted to the east and south, where Russia concentrated its efforts on capturing the Donbas region and securing a land bridge to Crimea. This devolved into a brutal war of attrition, characterized by intense artillery duels and grinding town-by-town battles that resembled the trench warfare of World War I. As of today, August 16, 2025, the conflict has settled into a protracted stalemate along a vast front line, stretching over 1,000 kilometers. Both sides have launched major offensives and counteroffensives with mixed results. Ukraine successfully liberated significant territory in the Kharkiv and Kherson regions in late 2022, but subsequent pushes have met heavily fortified Russian defensive lines replete with extensive minefields and trenches. Russia, in turn, continues to launch costly assaults on key Ukrainian strongholds, gaining incremental ground at an enormous human cost. The battlefield is now a deadly landscape of drone warfare, electronic jamming, and long-range missile strikes, where neither side has been able to achieve a decisive breakthrough. Looking ahead, the path to a resolution remains deeply uncertain. A complete military victory for either side appears unlikely in the short term. Ukraine's survival and its ability to reclaim territory depend heavily on the continued flow of Western military and financial support. Any wavering in this international coalition could dramatically shift the battlefield dynamics in Russia's favor. Conversely, Russia's ability to sustain its war effort hinges on its capacity to weather economic sanctions, maintain domestic stability, and continue sourcing weapons and ammunition, whether from its own aging stockpiles or from allies like North Korea and Iran. The war has become a test of endurance and national will. Several potential outcomes are being discussed by analysts. One possibility is a frozen conflict, where active fighting subsides but leaves Russia in control of occupied Ukrainian territories, with no formal peace treaty signed. Another scenario involves a negotiated settlement, though the current gulf between the two sides demands. Ukraine insists on the restoration of its 1991 borders, while Russia is unlikely to relinquish the territory it has formally annexed, makes this a distant prospect. The most optimistic but least likely outcome for Ukraine would be a total military victory forcing a complete Russian withdrawal. Conversely, a collapse in Western support could lead to a Russian victory. The future of Ukraine and indeed of European security hangs precariously in the balance.